Tonight, on First at 9 this Sunday the 10th of August 2025. VIP Underworld. Underworld figures received political protection and criminal networks were once under the control of politicians, says acting IGP Priyantha Veerasurya. Public Security Minister Ananda Vijayapala claims the police have failed to render a satisfactory service to the public. Youth politics. Activists accuse the governing National People's Power of secretly appointing office bearers to the National Committee of the Youth Club Federation. Former President calls for constitutional issues to be resolved through dialogue. Rising arrivals. Sri Lanka welcomed over 1.4 million tourists by the end of July. More than 40,000 arrivals recorded in the first 5 days of August alone.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's most trusted news source, Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. In your top story this evening, acting IGP Priyantha Veerasurya asserts Sri Lanka's criminal underworld received political protection and that several politicians exerted influence over underworld figures. Meanwhile, Minister of Public Security Ananda Vijayapala claims that the police department has failed to render a satisfactory public service by properly executing its duty to curb crime. These comments come against the backdrop of a failed escape attempt by criminal operator Thilina Sampath alias Walaskata while in police custody.
Thilina Sampath alias Walaskata, a close associate of infamous underworld figure Kehelbadara Padme, was arrested recently by the Western Province North Crime Division while in possession of over 5 million rupees worth of heroin. The arrest was made based on information gathered during the interrogation of Pasdeva, another close associate of Kehelbadara Padme. The Western Province North Crime Division received permission to detain the suspects for 90 days under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. However, Walaskata made an attempt to escape at around 9:15 p.m. last night, assaulting police officers and jumping out of a third-floor window. It is reported that the suspect fractured both legs and one arm and is currently receiving treatment at the Colombo National Hospital under strict police security. Further investigations into the incident are underway under the supervision of Senior Superintendent of Police Ashoka Dharmasena, in charge of the Negombo Division, and upon the instructions of the Deputy Inspector General of Police in charge of the Western Province North Crime Division, Nishanta Soisa. Meanwhile, yesterday, Minister of Public Security and Parliamentary Affairs Ananda Vijayapala expressed views on national security during an event at the Mahiyangana Divisional Secretariat Auditorium.
Some ask whether the police are asleep. We have failed to provide a satisfactory level of service to the public. Shootings are taking place here and there. The police department's aim is to create a society in which the people can live happily by preventing crime. However, when the task is not fulfilled, we are blamed for it. Do not delay justice. Many mistakes and faults can happen. That is understandable. However, we cannot excuse purposeful misconduct.
Meanwhile, acting IGP Priyantha Veerasurya, during a press conference yesterday in Badulla, commented on links between politicians and underworld figures.
There
were instances where the reporting of crimes was neglected. However, we do not let that happen now, because most underworld figures had received political protection. At certain times, politicians had maintained relationships with underworld figures, and some politicians may have had influence over these underworld figures. They want to showcase this as a trend, but we will take necessary actions within the legal framework.
In other developments, a sub-inspector attached to the Veeragula police station has committed suicide at around 1:30 p.m. today by shooting himself with his service firearm. The late sub-inspector had served as the community police officer in charge at the Veeragula police station. The sub-inspector, who was dressed in civilian attire, had shot himself at the edge of the police station's playground and died on the spot. The deceased was a 56-year-old resident of Urapola, Attanagalla. The magisterial inquest into the incident was conducted this afternoon, and the police spokesperson said the reason for the suicide is yet to be revealed.
හොඳම ෆෝන් එකක් ගන්න. ළඟම බාන්ස් එකට යන්න.
The SJB-led opposition's no-confidence motion against Deputy Defence Minister Aruna Jayasekara is due to be presented to the Speaker of Parliament tomorrow. SJB MP Ajit P. Pereira questions whether the Deputy Minister's involvement is the reason behind the apparent lack of progress of the investigations into the Easter attack. Deputy Minister of Defence Major General Aruna Jayasekara was the Army's commanding officer for the Eastern Province when the Easter attacks took place. Not only that, he is accused of concealing evidence regarding the bombings that occurred after the main attack and concealing or orchestrating the disappearance of witnesses with knowledge of the bombings. He has already given a 2-hour-long statement to the CID. He faces serious allegations in Parliament regarding his connections and involvement in the concealment of witnesses. In this context, it is our belief that Aruna Jayasekara, holding a position such as the portfolio of Deputy Minister of Defence, which directly influences investigations, is a threat to their independence. That is why the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, together with all other opposition parties in Parliament, is presenting a joint no-confidence motion against Aruna Jayasekara. We intend to present the motion to the Speaker tomorrow. If the government allows Jayasekara to hold the portfolio of Deputy Minister of Defence in such a context, it will be a serious indictment of their conduct. The question arises whether Aruna Jayasekara is the reason for the lack of progress of the Easter attack investigations. With that, here's a look at more of the latest opinions expressed in the political arena. Sajith Premadasa can never win elections because he can't lie. The leaders of the country must be able to lie. When you are in the opposition, you can say anything, make up any lie and deceive the people. That is not the case when you are in the government. Just look at this government. Are they following the JVP ideology? If they did, the government would have collapsed in 3 months. They are following Ranil's ideology. We inherited a bankrupt country that hadn't even completed debt restructuring. It was Anura who completed the debt restructuring process, which even Ranil Wickremesinghe was unable to do. Anura has done the best possible job during these 9 months. The opposition, especially the SLPP, are amusing themselves with the rocket controversy. We advise caution because otherwise you might crash land with the rocket. I believe that the Prime Minister told the truth. She is educated and good-hearted. She told the truth, but unfortunately the truth benefited the Rajapaksas. They previously claimed the Rajapaksas spent $320 million. She corrected this falsehood, and for that we are grateful to her. It was Tissa Attanayake during Ranil Wickremesinghe's government who first brought up Chichi's rocket. It was only after that we, the National People's Power, started to talk about it. None of what was said is a lie. Investigations will be conducted and the truth behind Supreme Sat and the $12 billion investment will be revealed. The person who made the allegation regarding the money in Uganda themselves accepted its falsehood. The truth behind the rocket controversy was revealed with the Prime Minister's answer. Dr. Nalinda cleared up Dirit Jayavira's antigen question. Now there's a conflict with Prime Minister Harini. I say this with confidence. If Prime Minister Harini is removed, the government will lose its 2/3 majority. 54 parliamentarians will become independent. If Prime Minister Harini made a false statement, it is she who should correct it. What Minister Wasantha Samarasinghe did was reprimand her. That is because the JVP headquarters demanded it. The government came to power on the back of countless lies. Now they are making up 1,000 lies just to cover up one. In the process, they have created an internal crisis within the party. Some question why we didn't respond to these accusations. We did, but they didn't listen to us. Youth activists accuse the governing National People's Power of secretly appointing office bearers to the National Committee of the Youth Club Federation. Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, commenting on the matter, urged the government and activists to open a dialogue to prevent the politicisation of youth clubs. In response, Deputy Minister of Youth Affairs Eranga Gunasekara claimed that it was the previous government that politicised youth clubs, particularly during the presidential election.
A national youth conference is scheduled to be held on the 12th of August, aimed at electing the National Committee of the Sri Lanka Youth Club Federation.
We expect to hold the conference under the patronage of the President. With the participation of 6,000 officials of regional youth conferences, this event will take place in Sugadadasa Indoor Stadium.
However, youth activists accuse that the Youth Club Federation's National Committee has already been appointed behind closed doors.
ඊයේ දිනේ හොර රහසේ
The National Committee of the Youth Club Federation was formed in secret yesterday at the National Youth Service Council. A youth who had not worked for a youth club and who only joined 4 months ago has been appointed the secretary. They will publicize on the 12th and you will witness that these are only NPP appointments. There are 8 independent votes from independent youths who truly worked on behalf of their clubs. The remaining 43 votes are from NPP yes men.
Activists informed opposition leader Sajith Premadasa of their concerns.
The youth club sector has become a victim of the Socialist Youth Association. It has been colonized by the JVP. The National Council that is to be established soon has already been turned into their political instrument. This is clearly a violation of the rights of this country's youth.
Against this backdrop, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe urged all parties to enter discussions to prevent the politicization of youth clubs.
Several issues has been raised due to the amendments proposed by the minister. There are protests taking place across the country. I heard that there will be a protest taking place after the national conference as well. If this continues, the youth club movement will deteriorate. The protesters say that these amendments were introduced with political motives. Instead of letting this issue continue, it is better to resolve it now. My suggestion is that the minister in charge, the former officials and representatives of district organizations must hold discussions and come to a solution that is satisfactory to all parties. We all know that we do not politicize youth societies. Otherwise, it will be a political issue. What I want to do is to protect this movement.
Deputy Minister of Youth Affairs Eranga Gunasekara responded to the former president's statement.
පරාද වෙලා අපේ රටේ ජනතාවක් ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරපු රටේ ජනාධිපතිවරයා
We have no need to hold discussions with the former president who lost the election and was rejected by the public. I would like to ask the former president why Tanuj Naveen, who was appointed the secretary of the National Conference of the National Youth Service Council's Youth Club Federation, was appointed the Galagedara electorate organizer with the intervention of Palita Range Bandara. There is photographic evidence of this incident. For former President Wickremesinghe during one of the youth summits in Maharagama organized by the National Youth Council. During the presidential election, around 536 million rupees was spent on concerts organized across the country. According to the Auditor General's report, 168 million rupees had been defrauded. Even when there is this kind of evidence against him, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe is still trying to make statements against us.
Governor-General of Australia Samantha Mostyn departed from the Bandaranaike International Airport this morning, concluding her 3-day official visit to Sri Lanka. During her stay, Governor-General Mostyn held bilateral discussions with President Anura Dissanayake and Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya. The talks focused on further strengthening cooperation between Australia and Sri Lanka, as well as exploring opportunities to expand areas of collaboration for the mutual benefit of both nations. While in Sri Lanka, Governor-General Mostyn also toured various regions of the country and visited several Australian-supported projects in Bandaragama, Mirissa and Waligama. Minister of Science and Technology Professor Krishantha Abesena and a group of officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs were present at the airport to see her off. Minister of Health Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa emphasises the ministry's commitment to advancing a fully integrated emergency care system which extends into the community beyond hospital confines. He stated this yesterday while attending the inauguration ceremony of the annual academic conference of the Sri Lanka College of Emergency Physicians.
The inauguration ceremony of the 2025 Annual Academic Conference of the Sri Lanka College of Emergency Physicians was held yesterday in Colombo under the patronage of Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa.
On the invitation of the Honourable Minister and the government, we are going to get about 150 more ambulances and the service will be expanded, which is very important. And then of course, we need to enhance emergency infrastructure in a more and more network manner, because in emergency, networking is very important. Levels of care is very important. When you get an emergency, we take the patient to the closest hospital. When you have a good pre-hospital care system, that is not the way to do. The patient should be taken to the most appropriate care institution, not the closest institution. Our vision is to build a truly integrated home-to-hospital emergency care system, one that is embedded within our primary healthcare strategy and accessible to all. To make this vision a reality, we are taking decisive steps. First, we are investing in capacity building at the grassroots level, ensuring that even the smallest peripheral hospitals are equipped and empowered to provide timely emergency care. Every citizen, regardless of location, should be able to receive competent initial care that gives them the best chance of survival and recovery. Second, the Ministry of Health is working closely with the Sri Lanka College of Emergency Physicians to provide leadership, coordination and continuity in planning, regulation, training and service delivery across all levels of the emergency care system. And third, we reaffirm our strong and ongoing commitment to developing a modern, coordinated and people-centered emergency service that works not just in the hospital but for the entire nation, from prevention and early response to rehabilitation and recovery.
The 2025 Grade 5 Scholarship Examination, which commenced at 9:30 a.m. today, was conducted at 2,787 examination centres across the island. A total of 307,951 candidates sat for the examination this year. Among them were 991 children with special needs, including 12 students who sat the exam using the Braille system. The examination concluded at 12:15 p.m. Commissioner General of Examinations Indika Kumari Liyanage said the examination was conducted smoothly and without incident. Results are expected to be released before September 20th. The Commissioner General also announced that the 2025 GCE Advanced Level Examination is scheduled to be held from November 10th to December 5th, while the 2025 GCE Ordinary Level Examination will be held from February 17th to February 26th, 2026. Welcome back. Sri Lanka has attracted 1.4 million tourists as of the 5th of August 2025 as it continues towards the target of securing 3 million tourist arrivals for the year. This figure includes 200,244 tourist arrivals recorded in the month of July. According to data from the Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, the highest number of tourist arrivals for the month of July was recorded on the 26th with 7,579. Meanwhile, 40,047 tourist arrivals were recorded between the 1st and 5th of August. India continues to be Sri Lanka's top source market with 37,128 Indian tourists visiting the country in July, while the United Kingdom trails in second with 23,475 British tourist arrivals. A significant number of tourist arrivals were also recorded from the Netherlands, China, France, Germany and Australia. The Colombo Stock Exchange, in collaboration with the Securities and Exchange Commission and stockbrokers, is hosting the Invest Sri Lanka Investor Forum in Singapore on August 12, 2025. The event aims to attract global investors by showcasing Sri Lanka's capital market as a promising frontier investment destination. Key participants include Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Economic Development Professor Anil Jayantha Fernando, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe, High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to Singapore Senarath Dissanayake and financial experts. 11 major listed companies will present at the forum, underlining the strength of the local corporate sector. The forum will feature panel discussions on the economic outlook and the equity market, led by international moderators and experts. In international economic developments, China wants the United States to ease export controls on chips critical for artificial intelligence as part of a trade deal before a possible summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Chinese officials have told experts in Washington that Beijing wants the Trump administration to relax export restrictions on high-bandwidth memory chips. However, the White House, State Department and China's Foreign Ministry did not immediately respond to requests for comment on the report. Foreign media reported that China is concerned because the US HBM controls hamper the ability of Chinese companies such as Huawei to develop their own AI chips. While this has impacted US firms' ability to fully address booming demand from China, one of the world's largest semiconductor markets, it still remains an important revenue driver for American chip makers. Welcome back. As US President Donald Trump prepares to meet Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska next Friday, aiming to broker a deal to end the war in Ukraine, European leaders warn against a deal that requires Ukraine to surrender territory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky approved the European sentiment, saying Ukraine is defending vital security interests of European nations. European leaders have cautiously welcomed US President Donald Trump's planned meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, set to take place in Alaska this Friday, aimed at renewed diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine. Trump has said the meeting could lead to a deal resolving the 3.5-year-old conflict, potentially involving some swapping of territories to the betterment of both. However, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European allies have warned that any agreement requiring Ukraine to surrender territory would embolden Russian aggression. A trilateral summit involving Trump, Putin and Zelensky remains possible, but according to the White House, only a bilateral meeting is planned for now. Ukrainian and Russian officials have not commented on the proposed talks. European leaders from France, Germany, the UK, Italy, Poland, Finland and the European Commission issued a joint statement supporting diplomatic efforts while stressing the need to maintain pressure on Moscow and uphold Ukraine's sovereignty. The path to peace in Ukraine cannot be decided without Ukraine, the statement read, emphasizing that any settlement must include robust security guarantees and begin from the current line of contact. Zelensky voiced full support for the European statement, writing on social media, "The end of the war must be fair. Ukraine is defending the vital security interests of our European nations." Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has engaged in a flurry of diplomatic calls ahead of the Alaska summit, including with leaders of China, India and Brazil. Brazilian President Lula da Silva said Putin had briefed him on the upcoming talks and broader peace efforts. Lula, locked in a trade dispute with Trump over US tariffs on Brazilian goods, has called for a BRICS response to the tariffs. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered in Tel Aviv to demand an immediate end to the Gaza war and the release of remaining hostages as Israel's government prepares to launch operations for a complete occupation of Gaza City. Amid rising public anger and international criticism, protesters blame Prime Minister Netanyahu's far-right coalition for prolonging the conflict, which has already claimed tens of thousands of lives on both sides. Over 100,000 protesters rallied in Tel Aviv last night demanding an immediate end to the Gaza war and the release of remaining hostages. The demonstration followed the Israeli Security Cabinet's decision to expand military operations by seizing Gaza City despite mounting public opposition and military warnings the move could endanger hostages. "This isn't just a military decision, it could be a death sentence," said Lishay Miran Laveh, wife of a hostage, urging US President Donald Trump to intervene. Polls show a majority of Israelis support a ceasefire to secure the release of around 50 hostages, with about 20 believed to be alive. Most previous releases came through diplomacy, but talks collapsed in July. Critics, including European allies and Israeli citizens, slammed Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right coalition for pushing further into Gaza. Protesters held signs blaming the government and mourning Palestinian and Israeli lives lost. Israel's military says over 400 soldiers have died, while Gaza's health ministry reports more than 61,000 Palestinian deaths since the war began in October 2023. In your sports news today, Hong Kong defeated Sri Lanka 33-0 in the final to win the Asia Rugby Men's Under-20 Sevens tournament in Bihar, India. They led 19-0 at the half-time and maintained their dominance throughout the match. The Sri Lanka Under-20 team delivered an impressive performance throughout the tournament, winning all 4 of their matches, including a group stage victory over eventual champions Hong Kong. However, they were outclassed in the final by a well-organised Hong Kong side. In the semi-finals, Sri Lanka overcame China with a 26-17 victory. In the women's competition, Sri Lanka defeated Nepal 24-12 in a playoff match to secure 7th place. The tournament featured 16 teams, 8 men's and 8 women's, competing over 2 action-packed days in a round-robin format. The top 2 teams from each pool advanced to the Cup semi-finals, while the remaining teams contested for the plate. That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.